I imagine many of you have other reminiscences that you would perhaps like to contribute, and David Hartley is compiling various reminiscences of the first 50 years of computing in Cambridge, and would welcome any contributions that you can send to him, and we'll probably be publishing those on the web in due course. But I think we'd better resist the temptation to take further comments now, or else we might not manage to move on to the next talk. So I think we'll move fairly directly on now to the next phase of the computer laboratory, when the single-user machines gave way to multi-user machines, the operating systems were needed, multi-programming, terminal access became popular, and Roger Needham is going to tell us about the work on the Titan. Roger doesn't need introduction, but I'll mention that he took the diploma here in 1956-57, stayed on as a research student, joined the staff, became the head of the laboratory, and has now become a prominent local businessman. He's going to tell us.
Thanks very much. The time I'm talking about roughly coincides with the 60s, but not exactly. At the beginning of that time, a decision was taken to collaborate with Ferranti, as it then was, on the production of a cost-reduced version of the Atlas. The Atlas was the most powerful British computer you could get at that time. It was also quite remarkably expensive. And there was no way that Cambridge University was going to be in a position to buy one. So the decision was taken to cooperate, making a cost-reduced version. What was done was to do away with the paging system, have a different memory management arrangement, have different peripheral organization, different memory organization altogether. Indeed, not much left, except the part that interpreted the instructions and did the floating point. No fixed store also was an Atlas feature, well, a feature that was dropped. Now, I first became aware of this when I just finished my PhD in 1961, and I was offered a job to do what would now be called design automation. David Wheeler was doing the logic design for all of the machine that we were responsible for, which was all except the arithmetic and the registers and all that sort of stuff. And he was producing pieces of paper. Somebody was going to punch these pieces of paper onto paper tape. I was going to write a program to check them for internal consistency, to plan the back wiring of the machine, the racks of the machine, to automatically lay out as much on printed circuits as I could. And by the way, I had a 1/3 time engagement starting with the 1st of January, and the first drawings were due at the factory on St. Valentine's Day. This was a challenge, which I did in fact meet, though it had never occurred to me before that 1/3 time was quite a lot more than 8 hours a day. At that point, this actually went fairly smoothly, but David wanted me to program the colors with which the wiring was done so that it would be easier for the engineers to follow a signal. So I did that, and then the Ferranti factory ran out of colored wire and did it all in grey. We duly made the printed circuits, and they were so badly manufactured that all the wiring had to be done over by hand. So this is the ordinary saga of a certain amount of wasted effort. I've never quite understood this. There are others who may know more about it than me. But I had the feeling that there was a view that quite a lot of the operating system software could be taken over from the Atlas. Of course, this was completely impossible. When you've changed the virtual memory system, you've changed the peripheral control. Well, what is an operating system? And jointly with Ferranti, or they may have been ICT by then, and they were ICL by the time we finished, we set off to design a new operating system from scratch. And eventually, a strong team was assembled to do this. David Barron, David Hartley, Barry Landy, Mike Guy, me, later on Sandy Fraser, now of AT&T. And we worked with a team of approximately similar size from the other side. Now, what we set out to make was a multi-programmed offline system. There weren't any time-sharing systems then. It had an enormously complicated arrangement of magnetic tapes for buffering the input, buffering the output, keeping the machine at the middle fed. And it was eventually made to work, though not by us. There was some question as to how many tape decks were required. It needed a lot. There was a question of should we have a spare, and when decision time came, it was decided that Dr. Hartley would be a better buy for the same money. I'm sure this was a very wise decision. So we worked away at this, and it was a quite extraordinary business. There was a time when I and two ICT people were working 3 shifts to debug some software. I came in midnight on Saturday and found my predecessor asleep on the listings. I felt like a great bum waking him up in order to be able to get the subject matter out. And my low point was at that period when I spent an afternoon sitting inside a humidifier, pouring cups of water over a pile of bricks in order that the air that went through this thing should be humid enough to make the air conditioning system work. It was very cold was the point. Cold air wasn't taking up enough water. Well, all of this was going on, and when one wasn't sitting in a 4x4 fixed steel box with a bucket of water, it was quite fun. When Maurice Wilkes went to the States and saw the CTSS, the first time-sharing system built at MIT, which was just coming into operation. And I went to the States the same year myself and saw this thing, as crude as hell. If I remember, they used flexowriters as terminals. But it was clearly the way to go. And when Maurice came back, he came back with a strong conviction that this was what must be done in Cambridge. Now, in order to do something, you couldn't, and not even Cambridge ingenuity, can make a time-sharing system based on magnetic tape. Well, we could have a damn good try, but we wouldn't succeed. So, Maurice approached ICL for funding for some discs, and to their eternal credit, they collaborated. And it was possible to wrench the whole project round and produce something which was not a copy of what they'd done at MIT. I personally would have been very discontented to produce a copy of anything, but was something that was characteristically different in its own right. What it did was to say that there were some things which you genuinely wanted to do interactively,